Caspian Report is basically an infographic channel, sort of the ones you can find a bunch of on YouTube. Oftentimes when you search a specific conflict, a specific thing that's happening, be it Syrian civil war, Ukraine war, or in this case, Israel, or the sort of plans for the future of Gaza, they'll have things to say. They'll have things to say from the neutral perspective, just getting the facts out there, just sort of like letting you know what's happening. But sort of similar to when we talk about Piers Morgan and his sort of wheel of neutrality, when it comes to certain conflicts, trying to put up neutrality, trying to put up or sort of this seeming objectivity through neutrality, I think is revealing of something I think much more sinister, and is trying to basically say that neutrality or sort of neutral view of the conflict is the way to go when it comes to, for example, a legitimate government and a terrorist organization. So today we'll be going through a bunch of clips we have from the Caspian Report, and I think it will be interesting to sort of look at this idea of neutrality or sort of neutral view of a conflict. Joining me today are Mark Pellegrino and Alex. Welcome to the reality show. Before we go into the first clip, Alex, have you heard about this channel before, and any opening thoughts?
To tell you the truth, I've watched a couple of things. I don't really, they're telling their side of nonsense, with the sort of guise of, yeah, we're just kind of giving it to you straight, the facts. We don't have any opinions about this, but it's like absolutely saturated with their own corrupt ideas, agenda, total lack of moral clarity, total lack of any type of philosophy. It's what else can you say? I mean, it's like they're not even, I don't really, I don't know. I mean, the standard is today, unless you are literally waving the Houthi and Hamas flag, they say that as being like, oh, that's like with an opinion. But if you're not waving the Houthi or Hamas flag or saying, death to all of the Jews, you're like, no, we're really neutral. We're really totally neutral. If you don't get your source of information from the electronic intifada and the Al-Quds newspaper and the Times of Gaza, then, we're neutral.
Yeah, I mean, talking about the electronic intifada, now I'm trying to quickly look up her name. We'll actually talk about Abby Martin probably on Friday, so people should look forward to that. But Mark, did you get a chance to watch a video and just sort of like your opening thoughts before we go into the clips?
Yes, I did get a chance to listen to the video. I had to listen to it while I was driving home from an audition. I have lots of thoughts, but I don't think I should broach them right now. I'd like to save them for the conversation.
Yeah, let me also remind people that today's episode of the reality show is sponsored by James Brown's new book, A Black Hole in Economics, Money Creation and Its Consequences. You'll hear a bit more about it later in the show. But for now, let's go into the first clip. This is, I believe, an opening.
This video shows Israeli rollers, bulldozers and trucks paving a new road along the Gaza-Egypt border. They're building a new buffer zone known as the Philadelphia Corridor, and the Israelis are there to stay. Here is what it looks like during the day. New realities on the ground are being designed, realities that hint at Israel's endgame for Gaza. Zooming out, we can see Israel building road networks all across the Gaza Strip, with some being kilometers wide, including a buffer zone around the edges of the enclave. These will be fortified with checkpoints, watchtowers, bases, and other surveillance tools. Using these strategic corridors, the Israeli army will be able to monitor any point in Gaza without necessarily occupying the entire territory. The idea is that in post-war Gaza, whenever Hamas fighters surface from underground and prepare to fire rockets, the Israelis would detect them in no more than a few minutes and launch a counterstrike. The Israeli leadership believes these corridors would make further Hamas transgressions improbable in the long term, or at least decrease the damage they can inflict. The Palestinian civilian population would be able to return, though they would reside within smaller chunks of territory, each disconnected from the other. Conflict is like that. The hand that wins gets to draw the map.
Now, I love the touch at the end. The hand that wins gets to draw the map. Similar to the, I think the statement, something like, the history is written by the victors. Like, there is no truth, there's no reality, there's no right ways to go. It's just whoever wins gets to dictate. And this is sort of like a view that's put out there that, you know, if Israel wins, Israel will get to dictate. If Hamas perseveres, Hamas will get to sort of dictate what's going to happen. I mean, Alex, what do you think?
I mean, it's you know, I really love the bit at the end where you had the arch terrorist, mass murderer Sinwar next to just Bibi, as if these are just two, you know, two groups of people who are just, you know, having a disagreement, and they're, you know, just you know, ironing out those disagreements in different ways, like warfare. It's completely you know, completely misses the point as to why you know, why exactly Israel is carving out these corridors, why exactly they're building these watchtowers. It's almost just like, oh, there's these people, the Israelis, and they really fancy spending billions and billions of dollars a year and sending young boys and girls to this place where they can arbitrarily, just totally arbitrarily, you know, monitor this population of people. And, you know, oh, they just randomly, for no reason whatsoever, for you know, for random punishments, if you will, they want to, you know, build roads to separate one area, you know, from another. No reason why anybody may indeed want to do that. You know, why it's a good idea, why it's a clear strategic imperative to do that, to create these roads, to have the ability to go in and out and to raid. Yeah, what really can you say? It truly is Caspian.
Yeah, and the fact that it starts with the bulldozer, the video itself starts with, you know, oh, this is what's happening. Again, people on that side sort of love to say history didn't start on October 7, but apparently it did start on when the bulldozers came in. I mean, Mark,
you know,
yeah.
Sorry, I just want to mention one thing because I don't want to forget about this. The bulldozers are actually under embargo by the US. Israel has required many more bulldozers, and you know, then they're just, you know, just kind of delivering them really slowly.
I mean, Mark?
Yeah, they certainly drop context as to why it's necessary for Israel to strategically divide up the area, to separate one section from another, and to keep them from organizing into more militant bands of militias. But one of the more disappointing aspects of this end game to me is that it presupposes that Hamas still exists, that the ideology still exists as a viable force within Gaza, and that they haven't actually achieved their end of compelling the Palestinian people to surrender. In which case, these roads may or may not be necessary if Hamas and the Palestinian people were to capitulate to civilization, which they haven't so far. So this, on the one hand, seems to be a recognition of the fact of the unfortunate fact that Israel will not take the fight to its full completion and has to some degree occupy Gaza to make them more or less civil and to reduce violence in the area. So I'm a little saddened by the fact that this seems to be the end game, that they're already pushing away from a complete and total annihilation of Hamas and the ideology and a re-education of that toxic society and into more or less, dividing them into separate camps that can't organize effectively and can be beaten, in the same tit-for-tat manner that we've been seeing for the last 70 years.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, pretty much this was somewhat clear from the start. I mean, from October 7th, from when Netanyahu set out, let's say, the policy for the invasion of Gaza, or sort of what's going to happen, it was destruction of Hamas and bringing hostages back. And, as unfortunate as it is for the hostages, when you put the idea of getting hostages back, the only realistic way sort of getting them is some form of ceasefire, is some form of basically compromising on what's it going to take. But yeah, let's listen to more.
I think Iran had it right when he said, we should hope to get the hostages back, but fight as if they're already dead. I mean, that's the only way you're going to beat Hamas.
Let's listen a bit more from Caspian Report.
Israel and Hamas are battling in the open while navigating a political minefield behind closed doors. Much of the negotiations converge around the configurations of Israeli buffer zones within Gaza in the form of extrajudicial corridors. Netanyahu is adamant about two, but a third one is already under construction and two more are in the pipeline. Using these corridors, Israel will have the means to permanently dictate life in Gaza while giving its troops the flexibility to deploy quickly throughout the enclave. One of the primary sticking points in the negotiations so far has been the Philadelphia corridor, specifically who will control it.
Now, there were two things that really pointed me that I found interesting here. And I think the specific use of language is really interesting. Really watch out. I mean, specifically in this clip, extrajudicial corridors. What do you mean? What does that mean? I mean, there is no, like, unless...
Illegal, Daniel. It means illegal. That's what he's trying to imply.
Yeah, but...
It means too much. It means more than is necessary. It means overwhelming. Apply whatever term you want. It means that Israel's doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, that's sort of like what is implied by it, because what does extrajudicial mean? It basically means, in not accordance to law, in not accordance to legal proceedings or something like that. But what law implies in what law is that in Gaza? By what law is Israel breaking? I mean, this is the war. This is the state of war. The sort of the idea that the law is not applied here is implicit in the fact that it's war. And I'm not even sure if at any point Caspian Report even refers to this as war or something like that. But I mean, Alex, what do you think? And well, before I go to you, I also mentioned one more thing. Oh, they also mentioned permanently dictate life in Gaza. That's what government is. I mean, depends how you define it, but the government sets up like the legal system that's going to. You could say, depend how you say it. You could say that's permanently dictating life, but sort of implication is like basically what Hamas has actually been doing until now, not recognizing any rights of its people. But I mean, Alex, what do you think about this language?
Oh, I mean, it's really quite incredible. The Gazans are, they really don't deserve this. They have done absolutely nothing, in my opinion, to deserve having their lives dictated to by the Israelis, because that is a massive improvement for them from having their lives dictated either by Hamas or, maybe having their lives dictated by the Egyptians or having their lives dictated by the Jordanians when the Jordanians killed 25,000 and kicked them out. Maybe you could have your life dictated to by the Lebanese who don't let them work in 21 different professions, don't let them drive, don't let them live in certain areas. You could have that kind of life dictated to you, but no, the Gazans lucked out. And, it's going to be the Israelis that are going to be, imposing the rule of law. And also, why would you want, need to think, why would you want to have these corridors? What do these corridors represent on the map? Just logically, it's the different clans. Duh. I mean, this is one of the things you also have to do from a strategic level in Gaza is you have to separate some of these clans because they're at war with each other. And what Israel doesn't want to do is to suddenly find itself in the middle of another Gazan civil war. I mean, people probably don't know this, but for the past, I would say 5 years, everywhere you go, almost every city where there's a large concentration of Arabs in Israel, be it Ramla, be it Lod, be it Jerusalem, you have violent warring clans who do things like throw grenades into and kill people. There's been a phenomenon even of women being killed in their cars with their children as revenge, from other gangs that have blood feuds. A lot of these clans in Gaza have blood feuds. That means you're at war for life, and your children are at war with the clan. So, that's also, and that is to have a road to keep those warring clans apart and to impose the rule of law is a huge benefit to the Gazans. Huge benefit, a huge benefit to their life. I mean, this is, probably going to be a massive upgrade. But no mention of that. It's just arbitrarily having, corridors, arbitrarily monitoring the situation, arbitrarily, watching to see if anybody is going to, throw a grenade, watching to see if anybody's going to try and send maybe drugs or missiles through the Mediterranean, through the Gaza port. I mean, why do the Israelis want to have the Philadelphia corridor? Why? Is it maybe to control a little bit of the smuggling? Is it maybe to control the massive influx of weapons that have been coming from Rafah, the human trafficking? Israel managed to somehow rescue a Yazidi sex slave from Gaza that had been smuggled in, human trafficked in to be some beasts victim. And Israel managed to, so that's the kind of thing, that's the kind of reason that you might maybe want to have like a border, that you might want to check what's coming in and out. I'm actually very grateful to live in a country where they check what's coming in and out of the border. It's a great thing for me. I don't have to worry about the streets being awash with drugs and weapons, right? I mean, these people they're just lost. They're totally pathetic.
Yeah, I'll go to you, Mark, but let's watch one more clip because I think the next one is pretty short. So let's just add it here.
In 2005, Israel withdrew its army from Gaza as part of a disengagement plan. This exit included a withdrawal from the Philadelphia corridor, as well as the withdrawal of about 9,000 Israeli settlers living in 25 illegal settlements in Gaza.
Oh, I know why I wanted to include this clip. Again, illegal settlements already, again, put it by what standard is it illegal? Is it illegal under Israeli law? I mean, that was part of Israel, so is that what he's implying? That's what was problem. It was just a bunch of rogue people just setting up settlements despite Israel not wanting it. No, it was a legal thing. People could be in Gaza, that it was part of Israel, and it was illegal by international law. Again, whatever that means. But again,
not really. It wasn't legal under international law either. So I mean, it's both ways. It's not legal. It was legal, totally legal.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, with respect to the first clip, the Israelis will be controlling whatever the Palestinians might do. Oh, they won't be able to murder Jews and each other anymore. How unfortunate. I would prefer that government too, and I'm sure any decent thinking person who lives in that area would probably be relieved to know that Israel has the security taken care of as opposed to Hamas. Let's not forget Yahya Sinwar made his bones torturing and murdering his fellow Palestinians, and yet he is still lionized as a saint from the Palestinian people who are clearly have been poisoned mentally. And what was the other thing with
Illegal
in this?
settlements.
Oh yeah, again, this is such a funky concept to me. I mean, you get the Palestinians screaming about apartheid state, yet it's they who cannot live with a Jew on their territory. Not only can they not live with a Jew in their neighborhood, if a Jew moves out of their neighborhood and leaves their home and technological advancements, they burn them into the ground and raze them to the ground to erase all evidence of their existence. Now, I understand there's controversy in the West Bank with respect to some of the settlements there, and people in the West Bank consider them encroachments and attempt to, create a greater Israel. And some of the folks who are making those settlements are fanatical Jews with a messianic vision. And look, religion fucks up everything, and clearly their perspective with respect to Israel is a little bit jaundiced, but I still have a difficult time understanding why a Palestinian can't live with a Jew in his neighborhood. It just sounds like a form of redlining that we gave up, many decades ago, but because we have the institutions in place that enable us to check our worst impulses and to actually correct our social wrongs, they don't seem to. And so these things, these concepts like illegal settlements go on with impunity, and they become part of the talking points for the Palestinian people.
I mean, I don't understand how Mark, you don't understand why you cannot have Jews next to Palestinians. I mean, you have to remember it's an Islamic society in a similar way that you cannot have a woman sort of, revealing herself. You have to have her completely hidden, is because, some men cannot control
Correct.
their urges. They might
That's
just do it.
correct.
So,
If a man,
if a
if a man
Palestinian
gets
sees a Jew, he cannot help it. He just has to do something.
That's true. If a man is turned on by a woman, the moral responsibility for that is on the woman. Let's not forget it's her fault if she's raped because she's sexy. Jesus Christ. I mean, you can't make this shit up. It's just,
Let's listen a bit more. We'll jump over a few clips because I think there are interesting ones a bit later. So let's start with this one. Making a fish tank.
Israel's endgame for Gaza is to dismantle Hamas's presence and ensure that no buildup can ever happen again. Controlling the Philadelphia corridor is essential to that plan, but there is more to it. Further north sits the Netzarim corridor. It was established as a result of the current hostilities. Measuring about 6 kilometers in length and 2 kilometers in width, the Netzarim corridor stretches from the Israeli boundary to the Mediterranean Sea. It also bisects Gaza City from the rest of the strip. The name itself, Netzarim, is a hint towards the future. Netzarim was one of the illegal Israeli settlements that existed in the Gaza Strip before the Israeli withdrawal in 2005. So the reintroduction of the name hints the Israelis might consider renewing efforts at constructing new settlements in Gaza. Some high-ranking Israeli ministers, such as Ben-Gvir, have suggested as much.
So, I mean, again, no build-up. Israel wants to make sure no build-up of Hamas can ever happen. I mean, I wonder why. I wonder why Americans didn't want any build-up of Nazis after the Second World War. I wonder why. Again, this sort of like neutral view of it, and also hint towards the future after calling the settlements illegal. It's already, look, they are going to break law again. They are going to build illegal settlements again. They called it Netzarim. That's what the settlement's name was. I mean, Alex, what do you
What
even
else are they
add?
going to call it? They literally reopened a road called the Carney Crossing that had been there since the 60s, that they closed off, that led you to go to Netzarim. So they're reopening that road and obviously taking that was there. They controlled it, so it's natural. What are you going to do? Yeah, we're going to pave a brand new road. Yeah, and what was Netzarim actually next to? The ancient synagogue that had been there for thousands of years, that's just beside the Gaza port, So it's all this kind of this lying, I suppose, about, well, what else are you going to call it? If you reopen a road, if you reopen the Carney Road that heads to Netzarim, what else are you going to call it? Flip-flop, flippity-blop. I mean, it's just, I don't know what I don't know. It's all of this kind of, yes, you're right. It's like gaslighting. The Americans did this, have been doing this to Israel since October 7th. After the response came back, from the Israelis on October 7th, there was this finger wagging that was going on. Finger wagging, right? Finger wagging from Blinken, finger wagging from Joe Biden. Israel has a right to self-defense, but don't break international law. It was all this. Israel has a right to self-defense, but don't you think about committing any war crimes? Don't you think about committing any atrocities? Don't you think about it? This finger wagging, and it started literally from October 7th, where it was this you watch it, you don't you do anything illegal. It's exactly that. This massive gaslighting. So it's just completely devoid of history, completely devoid of context, and yeah, like a total gaslighting.
Yeah, I just like to add, I hope Netanyahu doesn't commit any atrocities. I think the problem is when any legitimate self-defense is considered an atrocity. That's what makes it, you hide behind, well, I just think Israel shouldn't commit war crimes. But any legitimate action that Israel takes is a war crime. But, I just don't think they should commit war crimes.
Including reestablishing their ancient settlements, right? Including reestablishing their illegal, terrible apartheid settlements. I mean, what is this? What is this reality? It's absolutely. I don't know what to say. It's absolutely disgusting. This is despicable, totally despicable. The Jews were literally cleansed from Gaza, cleansed. No Jew has been in. None. Maybe actually no. Gidon Levy was one that managed to go. But besides that, maybe it would be nice for the Jews to go back and visit some of the artifacts. That this is what happens when you decide to completely cleanse an area from the Jews. It's then illegal and apartheid and a war crime for them to ever go back for any reason.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, you seem pretty happy when he said no buildup of Hamas can ever happen. What did you think about this part?
Well, I think Hamas should be totally annihilated. So I think they shouldn't be an entity that should exist, and any breathing acolyte of Hamas should be wiped off the face of the earth. That's a war crime, however, because I actually stand up for innocent life. I'm not protecting the scumbags, which is what international law seems to do. This also seems to touch on a sort of ancient blood libels. It seems like the Arabs really enjoy, and their pundits and leaders really enjoy kicking off paranoia in the Arab community. They did it for ages when they claimed that the Jews wanted to tear down Al-Aqsa Mosque and rebuild a temple, and that started conflagration after conflagration after conflagration. And here, I mean, they're saying, you know, the real intent is to rebuild these settlements, and then to reestablish a Jewish community in the area, which of course is not sinful by any sane person's imagination, but of course it's going to set off the paranoid, conspiratorial, habitual way of thinking in this toxic community, and it'll, you know, cause even greater problems to come. But as far as I'm concerned, short of defeating Hamas, which is what they really should do, and the Palestinian people capitulating, which is really what should happen, this is the second choice, which is dividing these clans and enabling Israel to strike effectively at anyone who decides to cause violence. Is it great? No, I prefer the end of Hamas, and I prefer the Palestinian people to fight to the last man, woman, and child if they had to, if they think their cause is such, and then reoccupy the land completely, annex it to Israel, and any Arab who wants to live in peace can live there. Anyone else can leave.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think we should put Al-Aqsa Mosque at public auction. You know, let's see who actually wants it more. You know, and let's just give
No,
it
they
to
won't. Apparently, and Alex might know this better than I, apparently they will not allow the Jews to excavate underneath Al-Aqsa Mosque or within the Temple Mount area, because they are are also apparently destroying evidence, archaeological evidence of Jewish existence in that area. So I mean, this is a group. This is a movement based on toxic dishonesty from the fucking get-go.
Yeah, you know, like truly, I have to say, no Jew cares. If somebody comes to the Western Wall, I would say there's a genuine delight when, you know, we see Chinese tourists and Muslim tourists, whoever, coming and taking, you know, pictures and, you know, true delight, I would say. Whereas there's this you're right, Mark, absolute conspiratorial nonsense that exists around, you know, Al-Aqsa Mosque was a wreck when it was under the control of the Jordanians. The Wahhabists, like the very, very respected, the very respected philosophers, right, that were Wahhabists, they hated Jerusalem because Jerusalem signified the city for the Jews. And so now they believe that Israel is digging underneath Al-Aqsa Mosque to make it collapse, which is obviously not true. And you have as well excavating.
Well, I think Hamas is trying to make Gaza collapse, therefore, because they're also
there you
building
go.
underneath.
But it's also, you know, this is like, this is the dumbest thing ever. Can you imagine if you excavated under there and you found all of these amazing ancient tunnels and amazing, you know, ritual baths? You would make millions because every single Jew, Christian would want to come and would want to see it. You know, and pay money, you know, and then when they leave, come and shop in your, you know, markets, right? Anyway, so they excavate underneath, the Arabs do, and they take all of the kind of archaeological evidence and they dump it in in like you know, they dump it basically in the skip. And then you had these you know, people from the Israel antiquities who were digging through, looking for the pieces, you know, the coins and the this and the that. Yes, all manner of bizarre conspiracies. I remember there was a huge riot because the Jews had decided to put a large menorah, golden menorah, on display in a case, you know, next to the Western Wall, and they said it's for the third temple, it's for it, they're doing it, and it was like this. Are you kidding? I mean, the levels of conspiracy that you truly have to fall to in order to believe some of this, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, let's listen more. But first, thank you, Regina, for your super chat. Thank you, Enric, for your super chat. Enric says, thank you for the moral clarity on the situation and true details on reality. Thank you for your support. And we have a super chat from PC. He says, UN wants Jews out of Old City. I mean, I think they want them out of Middle East, but you know, that's for another day. Maybe next time. But let me remind people again that today's episode of the reality show is sponsored by Jim Brown's new book, A Black Hole in Economics, Money Creation, and its Consequences. Link for that is in the chat and description. Let me read you a little bit from chapter 1. In the field of money creation, ignorance is not bliss. If you know how banks create new money, you can begin to understand how the money supply grows, its source, who benefits, and who is harmed. But if, like most experts, you perceive commercial banks as mere financial intermediaries transferring money from a saver to a borrower, you won't understand their unique economic importance. Nor will you know how their legal privilege to create money can work for good or ill, depending on who makes the money creation decisions. So as I always say, I think money are one of the most important technological advancements in humanity. They allow us to trade, they allow us to preserve value for the future, for future consumption. So understanding money creation, I think, is a very important thing to understand. And you can get that understanding with Jim Brown's new book, A Black Hole in Economics, Money Creation and Its Consequences. Again, link for that is in the description and in the chat. And also all royalties go towards the support of Ayn Rand Centre UK. So you can both get more knowledgeable and you can make sure we stay on air, make sure that we continue to produce content for everybody. But okay, guys, let's listen a bit more, because I think Biden is mentioned in the next clip.
This is now the main obstacle to a truce deal, but even the Americans are struggling with the new negotiating point.
Wait, actually, I wanted to put this one first.
The Netzarim corridor hosts at least 5 forward military bases that are used to monitor and control the movement of people between northern and southern Gaza. The construction of these outposts and the extensive land clearing nearby suggest that Israeli boots on the ground are to be permanent. So even after the current hostilities subside and Palestinian civilians return to their homes, or what's left of them, Israel will have the ability to control life in Gaza without needing to occupy the area entirely. Netanyahu has already declared that under a truce agreement, Israel would not withdraw from the Philadelphia and Netzarim corridors, including the Rafah crossing. Palestinian diplomats reject such buffer zones in both corridors and argue that Netanyahu added these negotiating points to derail the ceasefire talks.
Now, I think the last part was the best one, but I'll mention the first ones first. So again, this idea of, so, you know, even after the hostilities go and the Palestinians can finally get home, again, no talking about why it happened, what's going on. And also, nice addition, can go to their home or what's left of them. I mean, Israel is so horrible. They destroyed every single building there for no reason. But also, I think there was a nice touch at the end, and someone actually brought it up in the chat. Palestinian diplomats. You mean members of a terrorist organization talking about a ceasefire or a peace deal with an actual legitimate government. And also, the favorite part, derails the ceasefire talks. I mean, Alex, how can Do you think he was laughing during that? He was like,
Yeah, so
no, I
those,
cannot say that. I
well,
cannot say that.
it's just too much. I mean, you know, the very beginning of the kind of clip that you played, it was the Netzarim corridor, you know, that is the main, you know, that is the main obstacle to getting to peace, not the hostages that you are still holding, right? It's not Hamas by any chance that would be an obstacle to peace, the terrorist organization that's committed to the you know, committed to the destruction of all of the Jews in the world. Yeah, they're not the obstacle to peace. It's the Netzarim corridor. Yeah, the Netzarim corridor is the real, you know, it's just, yeah, if you just didn't have the Netzarim corridor, then everything would be totally fine. And yeah, I mean, why would the Jews want to do that? You know, why? It's just so totally unnecessary. And this entire thing about Netanyahu, right? This kind of Netanyahu is changing at the last minute. Netanyahu is not the person who can all of a sudden unilaterally just change an agreement. He has all of his advisors in the cabinet. He sends his chief negotiator from the Mossad to go and talk about all of the, you know, so this idea that he could, you know, take the post-it note, right, that had the offer on it, you know, for the Israeli people that are being held in tunnels, and said, oh, I'm changing it because I'm just scheming. I mean, it's so disgusting. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's like, I mean, wow. It's almost like saying, a bit more to Mark's point, it's sort of, you know, like saying, you know, we simply wouldn't have any sexual assault in this world if women just knew how to dress. Okay, if the women just really controlled, you know, the way they dress, then we could solve the whole issue of sexual assault, right? Just totally taking the blame and putting it directly on the victim.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, isn't it true? I mean, there will be no violence against Jews if there were no Jews in the Middle East. So,
How true that would be. And you know, in many places in the Middle East, they've attempted to achieve that. It's so funny to hear them talk about the Jewish state being an apartheid state. I recently spoke with a Palestinian who lives in Jordan. I said, "How many Jews live in Jordan? Aren't Jews legally banned from Jordan? And why aren't you calling that an apartheid state?" He ducked the answer. Look, this whole section of the video presupposes something that I think is totally and utterly illegitimate, that Hamas and the Palestinian people can make any fucking claim at all. They can't. They have no negotiating power, and nobody should be negotiating with them. And they wouldn't have it if they surrendered. They especially don't have it now that they haven't given up their toxic ideology. So as far as I'm concerned, they have no say in the matter. They're the ones who have created the situation that they're in. It's time to stop blaming it on everyone else like malignant narcissists do, and start to realize that you're in the shithole you're in. You're in the bind you're in because of what you've chosen to do. Now, since you live by the law of the jungle, we now have to cage you up and make sure that you don't do bad things to people anymore because you're toxic and fucked up. And you have no legitimate say in anything that happens from this time forward. Thank you. Bye. And you know what? I hate to sing Trump's praises, but he wrote something on I don't know if it was Truth Social or on X where he gave an ultimatum to Hamas that if the hostages weren't returned by the time he was in office in January 20th, 2025, there was going to be hell to pay in the Middle East. Now, you know, that could be him bloviating, or that could be a real thing. And if it's a real thing, that's pretty cool. And it needs to be said, it needed to be said. And the fear of Allah needs to be stricken upon these people so that they understand they can't continue to behave like psychopathic morons and get anything that they want.
yeah, we've talked about that on the daily objective, so people can check that out after this. Let's listen to a few more clips. So let me go to the ones I want to play.
This is now the main obstacle to a truce deal, but even the Americans are struggling with the new negotiating points. The Biden-approved plan for negotiations and even the UN Security Council resolutions do not mention Israeli presence in the Philadelphia and Netzarim corridors. Still, Netanyahu is pressing on. Without enforcement, rules are just polite suggestions. Meanwhile, the Israeli government is now also working on a third buffer zone. Israeli forces have taken control over the port of Khan Yunis and have vacated and cleared the stretch of territory going towards the Israeli town of Kisufim. Buildings have been destroyed and much of the earth has been flattened here. A new corridor is likely to go through this territory.
Oh my God, Israel is going rogue. They are talking about something that the UN or Biden don't even mention. They don't even talk about the Netzarim corridor and the Philadelphia corridor. How dare Israel even discuss this without the UN doesn't have anything to say about that. I mean, Alex, how dare you?
I mean, absolutely, it's totally disgusting. Yeah. So it just completely again devoid of any reality. So what if the UN tells you that you're supposed to do something? The UN are a gang of dictators. So so just say it like it is. So North Korea and Russia and Myanmar, they all told Israel that this is really not acceptable and you're not allowed to do it. Yeah, so what's that? What does that mean? It means absolutely nothing. Just again, oh no, they're going against the UN. Oh gosh, we mustn't. We really mustn't. Yeah, so this thing about Netanyahu being this sort of unilateral decider, dictator, the man who is just deciding everything, and it's just crazy, totally crazy that he would want to have a corridor that separates the warring clans in Khan Yunis who are going to be warring for control. Crazy that you would want to do that. Crazy that you would want to be able to have roads going in and out so that you can easily access the terrorists. Crazy that after 200 people were taken hostage and taken back to this area, that Israel would want to say, no, not again. I'd rather not. That was you had your fun on October 7th. Okay, glad it was very exciting for you, but now we are we're gonna maybe just avoid that in the future. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
all of the time. It's the finger wagging. That's the thing that really gets me. The finger wagging. Don't you dare! Don't you dare! Don't you dare! Don't you dare build a road! Don't you dare! Don't you dare police the area where the terrorists live. Just leave the terrorists on their own. If you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone, right? It's just...
yeah, I mean, just a question for you, Mark. I mean, from what he said, the fact that UN is not even talking about these corridors, and Biden isn't either, and Netanyahu is like insisting on it, despite the fact that Hamas doesn't want it. I mean, doesn't that make Netanyahu a bad faith negotiating partner, Mark?
No, it makes him somebody who's interested in the welfare of his own people and doesn't consider a rogue organization like the UN had to have a legitimate opinion on the matter. It's really not the UN's business how Israel defends itself. It really isn't. And an organization that holds every state as somehow morally equal, like North Korea, Iran, Saudi Arabia, as moral equals to any semi-free Western European country or the United States, is an illegitimate organization on its face. It's inherently corrupt. And no thinking person should listen to anything they have to say. And the fact that Netanyahu isn't and moving forward with the security of his people in mind, makes him the most moral person in the room.
So we are almost out of time, but I think we still have time for a few clips. I think This should be.
The sum of these 3 or possibly 5 corridors would enable Israeli forces to monitor any point in the Gaza Strip and respond within minutes to any threat. In other words, Israel is turning Gaza into a fish tank with surveillance on all sides. Altogether, in its fight against Hamas, Israel has played the long game. Some will call it the slow game. It has now effectively reduced Hamas from an army capable of firing 1,000 rockets an hour to an insurgency that can fire 12 rockets on special occasions.
Yeah, I mean, with this one specifically, it only the idea of fish tanks sort of rubbed me the wrong way, because it reminded me of, you know, like it's like shooting the barrel in the fish. Like, was that the implication, or am I just like going completely crazy? Like, is he implying, oh, you know, now they put them in these nice little like small spaces so they can kill them all or something like that? I mean, you know,
Well,
I
so
might
they
be.
can observe them, so they can watch them. They're trapped, so they can watch them, and they can't do anything or move anywhere. They have no freedom of movement. That's what he's implying.
Why would you want to have surveillance in a place that there's like terrorists? And it was almost as well this kind of disappointment that Hamas's forces had been reduced. And what are they talking about? Israel is playing the long game, as if, you know, as if October 7th was in Israel's strategic vision, you know? Like, as if that was kind of, you know, in 2005, you know, when Sharon decided to do the unilateral disengagement, everybody got together and they said, okay, fine, we're going to withdraw in 2005. And then, you know, we're just going to wait for, you know, 18 years. And then in October, in 18 years, there's going to be an invasion, and we're going to go back and we're going to play the long game. Okay, we're just going to play the long game. Like, it's conspiratorial in the extreme. And this sort of like, yeah, they just arbitrarily like want to survey the place with the terrorists. And so they want to come in and they want to have easy access to the terrorists. It's just those terrible, terrible people.
Yeah. And, you know, to me, the fact that Hamas was reduced from an army to a group of insurgents who can only sporadically fight is still a disappointment, because they should have been reduced from an army to zero, to nothing, to incapable of doing anything, to even changing a diaper. That's what they should have been reduced to. And the fact that they can still break out and commit violent acts against Jews is, to me, a violation of the sanctity of human life and the responsibility of a government to protect its own people. And when you say playing the long game, I have a slightly different take than Alex. It's like, well, what other game is there for human beings? Of course, you're supposed to play the long game. That's what a rational life is. That's what rational self-interest is. Even though they're implying it in a conspiratorial sense, the idea is that a state should be looking far ahead into the future for its people. That's the idea. The fact that Hamas didn't, when they attacked Israel on October 7th, only thinking that, oh, we'll encourage a disproportionate response that will get the attention again of the Arab community because they're leaving us out of the Abraham Accords and we can't be left out of those. We have to be a fundamental part of this negotiation, and then this will start the conversation going again. They had no idea that Israel was going to respond as powerfully as they did, because they're not thinking in the long term. And thank Dad, Israel is thinking in the long term. I'd wish they'd just do it with even more vigor than they're doing it now.
Let's go to the last clip, because I think that one was the most revealing.
For the Israelis, the key is now to prevent Hamas from regrouping and replenishing its resources. In theory, anytime a Hamas fighter emerges from the underground tunnels, they would have no more than a few minutes to set up and launch a rocket before disappearing. Those are the terms the corridors impose on Gaza. However, blueprints rarely survive the build. While Israel's endgame for Gaza could see both the return of Palestinian civilians as well as the return of Israeli settlers, the corridors would become lightning rods for future attacks. They also don't address the fundamental issues between Israelis and Palestinians. Antagonism between the two communities will persist, if not worsen. So while the map will bend and change, enmity will stay in place.
So you have this whole video describing what's going on, what is the plan, what might happen, then calls this, well, these things are basically just lightning rods for future attacks, basically saying Israel is encouraging attacks, Israel is encouraging more Palestinian violence by being present. And, just at the end mentioning doesn't address the fundamental issue between the population. And you just leave it at there. What is the fundamental issue? I mean, you cannot just drop it there. It's like Ayn Rand like ending Atlas Shrugged just before John Galt's speech. It's like, well, what do you mean? Like we were just about to get to the good part. Why would you like cut off here? And yeah, like I'm wondering what he thinks the fundamental, and I'm wondering how is this not addressing the fundamental issue between Israelis and Palestinians? I mean, Alex, what do you think Caspian Report thinks the fundamental issue is?
Well, the way that he's describing it, it's almost a little bit like he's talking about, he's talking about like the West Side Story, where you had, the Puerto Ricans, fighting the American gangs, and it was, one would, throw a rock and the other would throw a rock, and it was just, they were just two groups of people. That's the Israelis and the Palestinians. That's what it's like. Completely ignoring, and this also this has been going on, I think, since sort of 9/11 era, and the war against terror, that there's this idea, if you fight the terrorists, you're going to radicalize more people. Okay, which is just I mean, it's based in nothing. They were, the Americans were finger waving and saying that to us. This will how on earth could you possibly radicalize the Gazans more? I mean, I that is a frightening idea. How on earth, these are people who take a look at what they did on October 7th, how they celebrated it in the street as dead bodies. Were being paraded on the back of motorcycles. They spat on the naked dead bodies of women that were in the back of pickup trucks. This population can be further radicalized. No, this population has to be broken. Their spirit has to be broken. They have to understand the consequences of their actions, that terror will no longer be tolerated. And why is it that the Philadelphia corridor is such a bone of contention? Because if the Israelis control the Philadelphia corridor, then you can no longer arm Hamas. They die. They literally die off. And yeah. It's again just I mean what else would this person have you do? And this it reminds me of Antony Blinken. I mean, Antony Blinken on October 7th, I think it was like at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or maybe in the evening, he made a tweet and then deleted it saying, like the hostilities should end and you should put the hostages back, and it was just absolutely unbelievable. I mean, he deleted it a few seconds later, but so if Antony Blinken, I don't know what he is, some kind of sick pacifist, would have gotten his way, there would have been, no retaliation. They could have just maybe figured it out through negotiation. Just release all the prisoners, release all the murderous prisoners, and we'll give you back the children that we kidnapped, the 3-year-olds and the babies that we kidnapped.
Yeah.
What kind of a universe?
I mean, I always talk about how sort of the Western leaders almost view this conflict as a game. You just yeah, I mean, just the whole idea of international law, and we can just have a friendly war. We can just have a we can just abide by rules and have a friendly way of killing each other, or a rule oriented way of killing each other. And this idea of like, yeah, when you kill terrorists, you're just radicalizing the people. It's like they view it as like a game of whack-a-mole. Like, oh, you whack one and two more like pop up, and we're actually we are still dealing with Japanese like emperor aligned like radicals, because whenever we kill one, the two like suddenly come into existence somehow, and we just indefinitely have to like get rid of these people. But it doesn't work like that. And again, it's insane. But I mean, Mark, any last thoughts on Caspian report?
Yeah, the fundamental issues between the Palestinian Arabs and the Jews is that the Palestinian Arabs can't live with the Jews. They hate them and they want them dead. And you can't negotiate with people like that. You simply have to beat them into submission. And the submission means they understand that their way of looking at the world is toxic, painful, harmful, and will end up, getting them killed and living in poverty. So that's primarily what they have to do. And unfortunately, the existence of these corridors and this military presence is a step in the direction of, we're not necessarily planning on killing this ideology off or re-educating these people. We're going to let this cancer continue to live in these areas, and occasionally when it flares up, we're going to laser the tumor off and just let it continue to fester. That's unfortunate, because the goal of the Israeli army should be to make these people lose faith in their cause, and to beat them to such a degree that they no longer have faith in their cause.
Yeah, I think you summed it up pretty nicely. Let me just remind people again that today's episode of the reality show is sponsored by James Brown's new book, A Black Hole in Economics, Money Creation and Its Consequences. You can find out more about it in both the description and the live chat right now. And I also like to mention that all royalties go towards the support of Ayn Rand Centre UK, so you can make sure we can stay on air. But Alex, any last thoughts, and also where can people find you?
Yeah, so I really want to congratulate, I think, the IDF, and also congratulate the government for managing to get to this point, because I want to read you out a tweet from Antony Blinken on October 8th, whilst the bodies were still burning, whilst there were actually actively still fighting going on, when Hamas actually had control of many of the various kibbutzim, many of the moshavim. Turkish foreign minister and I spoke further on Hamas's terrorist attacks in Israel. I encouraged Turkey's advocacy for a ceasefire and the release of all the hostages held by Hamas immediately. Quite rightly, he deleted this, but it shows you, can you imagine what it was like for the Israelis, for the Israeli government, for the IDF, when Antony Blinken was coming here, finger wagging from October 8th onwards, whilst literal babies were being held, whilst the bodies were still burning. I mean, how truly that is terrifying. I mean, that really says to me that if America had been invaded by China or something, Antony Blinken would have said, "We'll give them Hawaii, and that will be the end of the story." So I want to dedicate it to the Israeli people, and I recommend Habet Honistim. Sorry for my filibustering at the end.
Well, I'm sure we would definitely see the sort of equivalence of a World War II anti-war propaganda, when they, the big French propaganda against the war was "Don't die for Danzig," which was the area that sort of Germany was saying, this is our land. And I think we would hear "Don't die for Hawaii." I mean, come on, it's who even likes that state? I mean, it's a Democrat state. who cares? You know, that's what probably you would hear. I mean, if the sort of equivalent ideas were applied. But I mean, Mark, any last words, and where can people find you?
Yeah, go IDF. Israel, you're on the side of righteousness. Do not let these nihilists impact you or degrade your moral clarity. You are on the side of good. Fight until these savages are done. And yes, you can find me on Mark R. Pellegrino on X. You could also look to my profile for AmericanCapitalistParty.org. Pop on that site, read the policies. If you like them, donate and become a member, because we are now going to become, in the next 2 years, I guarantee it, mark my words, a political force in the United States of America.
So we should definitely be expecting a sweep in 2026 when the next, you know,
Not a sweep.
or
Expect some people to be elected at local level, local and state levels.
Yeah, and that's always a great way to start. So let me just again remind people: a black hole in economics, money creation and its consequences. You can find more about it in the description and in the chat. Thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you everybody for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Daily Objective and the Reality Show. Thank you and bye-bye.
Peace.